This St. Vincent Kate Bush lie is so random, and more than any of my other videos, I'm so curious what you have to say. Although, if you wish to lodge a complaint, lodge it elsewhere.
Danny Weller, lodged that complaint.
Because this is not my story.
Oh my God. Didn't he die?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I'm at two minds about it, honestly. I actually really like St. Vincent. But what was so weird about this is that this lie/discrepancy somehow made it into Kate Bush's induction ceremony. And this rabbit hole that I went down all started because of my willingness to wait for a good French fry.
Ow! Hot, hot, hot!
Or, well, any kind of French fry, because the French fries were not honestly that good. They were Burger King French fries. But while I was killing time waiting for said French fries,
breakfast time, breakfast time, breakfast time.
I happened upon this Reddit thread about pop stars caught in a lie. And it was from 2 years ago, so I don't think anybody's put together the pieces, because like I said, this thread was from 2 years ago, and Kate Bush's induction was just this year. Any current Reddit threads were regarding St. Vincent's performance at Kate Bush's induction, where she sang Running Up That Hill, which was in itself polarizing because, well, people had thoughts about it, and we'll talk about that too. But welcome, fellow alien and fellow philosopher. Hi-yo, my name is Io. And if you like this, there were so many other fascinating stories in this Reddit thread. So if you'd like to let me know that, like and subscribe and share this video. That way I know you want to see me go down more rabbit holes. Rabbit holes. In addition to this lie, there were other St. Vincent allegations that honestly might get this video removed. I'm scared. Loma Vista Recordings is releasing a new St. Vincent album, and I was excited when she released this Broken Man video. I didn't want a St. Vincent exposed video. If you're a St. Vincent fan or a Kate Bush fan, I encourage you to watch this video till the end, because there's a twist. But let's start with a little background about St. Vincent in case you don't know who she is. Kate Bush is not the first legend with which St. Vincent has been associated. In 2012, she made a whole album with David Byrne of Talking Heads. But put a pin in that, as that will come up later. Earlier, it was in the late 1990s, a young musician named Annie Clark started her musical journey into the music industry. Born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, she would later adopt the stage name St. Vincent. She attended Berklee School of Music in Boston, where she honed her songwriting and her guitar skills.
Joyful! I don't know how to do that. Oh my God, honey. It's like, yeah, because I feel like, woo! That's a form of joy.
After graduating, she later joined the Polyphonic Spree, which actually I didn't know. And it's kind of crazy because I actually had one of the Polyphonic Spree albums that St. Vincent was on. So it's kind of weird. I had no idea that she was on it. But she later toured with Sufjan John Stevens. But in 2007, she released her debut album, which was entitled Marry Me, which received critical acclaim for its innovative sound and its poetic lyrics.
My saving grace, while Jesus is saving.
It was here where one of the offending interviews took place, where she was promoting this album, and she was being interviewed by Pitchfork. Quote, "This may sound really silly, but I just discovered Kate Bush probably 6 months ago, and I think she's so great. I know I'm very late to the party here." She laughs. I know this is old news, but I got a Kate Bush record and I forget, I think The Dreaming is on it, though I'm spacing on the name of the record. And then in parentheses, they confirmed that she was talking about The Dreaming. It has Kate Bush in this totally miraculous ascot too, on the back. She just went for it. It's so great. She really went for it, unquote. And of course, you know, this doesn't sound like a big deal, but there was a second interview in 2014 for a BBC documentary about Kate Bush, where St. Vincent was interviewed.
I still remember going to the CD store and buying Sensual World when I was 16, and the cover, and there's a rose in front of her mouth that has bloomed. She's got big wide eyes, and I remember, you know, putting it in the shitty car stereo on the way home. And, you know, and my life was forever changed.
But that interview was played in Kate Bush's induction ceremony. And people were saying in this Reddit thread, you know, maybe St. Vincent got mixed up. She's saying in this interview that she was 16 when she got her first Kate Bush record, and she was 16 in 1998. And that other interview from 2007, she's saying she just discovered Kate Bush, and that was in 2007. I mean, that's a 9-year discrepancy, especially since in this interview, she's much more enthusiastic about her love of Kate Bush. Trust me, as a musician, this kind of thing is ingrained in your brain. You're not going to forget your influences. I know that. Maybe for the average person, you might forget, but as a musician, believe me, you're not going to forget which album was which. These are two different albums she's talking about.
I also read in that original Reddit thread that there was an interview where St. Vincent said she saved up for her purchase of the Sensual World. Now, I couldn't find this interview anywhere, so if you know what it is, let me know. But if that's true, at 16, more than likely, you're not saving up for an album from an artist you don't know anything about. Especially since in 1998, the Sensual World was almost 10 years old. That would mean she knew about Kate before 16. Moreover, the ascot she mentioned on the back cover, since this is the back cover listed, I don't know, maybe there were other versions. I couldn't find Kate in an ascot at all. The only thing that came up when you look up Kate Bush and ascot is the St. Vincent interview. I don't know. I don't want to say it doesn't exist, though. I wouldn't want to make a ascot out of myself. Terrible. But it's clear that Kate Bush's incredibly forward-thinking image had a big effect on St. Vincent, because in that other interview, St. Vincent mentioned
The cover, and there's a rose in front of her mouth that has bloomed.
Does this matter? You might be asking yourself right now. Maybe not. But what I didn't like is it started to eat at me and made me question St. Vincent's integrity. But what do you think?
Like I said, I'm at two minds about it, because I was thinking 2007 to 2014, this is peak time for indie music. But indie music was always about the hottest band with the most buzz. People always wanted to be listening to the hot band. And so there was just a very short shelf life for a lot of these bands. I mean, many of them were like, poof, they're gone. Like, where did they go? I mean, maybe they're still around, but, you know, you don't hear about them anymore. I'm thinking, Mew, let me see. Phoenix, I guess they've made music recently, but you still don't hear about them often. Mr. Jens Lekman. Oh, God, there's so many bands I used to listen to during that time period that, like, where did they go? They just, like, disappeared. And say what you will, but St. Vincent is still around, you know? She's still alive and kicking.
Though with context, girl, your latest video seems
Liar, liar, pants on fire, hanging from a telephone wire.
a little ill-advised. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Sure, Jan.
Well, wiggle up.
So maybe it was her trying to keep up with some kind of like indie cred or something, and and being part of a Kate Bush documentary. And I guess liking Kate Bush from when you're young is somehow going to give you more indie cred somehow. But I have difficulty following this logic, honestly. It seems such a weird thing to lie about for that reason. My other thought is something we've talked about quite a bit on this channel, and that's how female artists kind of have to play the straight and narrow on things like influences, lest they be called a fraud in some way, or in the case of influences, be called a copycat. Because I really do feel like female artists do get accused of being a fraud for one reason or another, and influences are one of the many ways that this can be true.
The thing is, I don't ever remember people comparing her to Kate Bush. However, there are other of St. Vincent's contemporaries I have heard this about.
It's a shame, yeah, it's a shame I spilled the milk on the bed. Dang.
While I realize it's a huge compliment, I'm endlessly fucking annoyed by being told I'm this generation's Kate Bush. She's our generation's Kate Bush. She's an active artist who's topping the charts and is irreplaceable. I, meanwhile, am this generation's Caroline Polachek, unquote. Caroline Polachek started as a sort of indie artist around the same time as St. Vincent. She's drawn more direct comparisons to Kate Bush. She employed a different strategy, though, to survive that indie hype machine we just talked about. She did it by changing her act name every so often. She started in the band Chairlift, where she first drew Kate Bush comparisons because of not only her visual and her music, but also because of the theatrical way she uses dance. She then moved on to Ramona Lisa, which was actually just her. But this is where she started to learn how to produce her own music, starting by using GarageBand, which is actually how I started too, as did Grimes. But I actually saw Caroline play during this incarnation when I was living in Brooklyn. Eventually, she recorded under her own name, and this is where she really developed as a producer. However, it would not be the first time she would have to defend herself being called a fraud, but we'll get into that later. Also, female millennial and Gen Z artists are hardly the first compared to Kate Bush.
Come to think of it, Tori Amos was accused of something very similar when it came to Kate Bush. And I think Tori Amos kind of downplayed this, although I don't think she was ever, caught in a lie about it. But let me know in the comments if you know of something like that. But actually, a few months ago, I was watching a reaction to Tori Amos's Boys for Pele. And the reactor accused Tori of being a dime store Kate Bush.
It's just kind of not great. It's just like dollar store Kate Bush to me.
So even to this day, it kind of happens to Tori Amos. So maybe that's why in 2007, St. Vincent decided to say that she just discovered Kate Bush. Kind of playing offense in case people would say she's copycatting Kate Bush. But it's still really weird that this other interview became a part of Kate Bush's induction ceremony. It was played right before St. Vincent's performance of Running Up That Hill. This was polarizing too. Some people thought it was terrible. Other people thought she was just nervous. Some said it was a stylistic choice. Others were saying that Running Up That Hill is such a singular song for Kate Bush and a very difficult song for others to sing.
Coincidentally, Tori Amos, who used to play down the Kate Bush comparison, has also been playing Running Up That Hill live. Though an early interview, she very much made it clear Kate was not an influence. Quote, "I'll never forget the first time I heard about Kate. I was playing in a club, I was 18 or 19, and somebody came up to me, pointed their finger, and said, 'Kate Bush.' I went, 'Who's that?' I wasn't really familiar because Kate didn't really happen in the States until Hounds of Love. I was shocked because the last thing you want to hear is that you sound like someone else. Then people kept mentioning her name when they heard me sing, to the point where I finally went and got her records. When I first heard her, I went, wow, she does things I've never heard anybody do, much less me." Later in the interview, Tori says, "I had to be careful, so I didn't voraciously learn her catalog. I left the records with my boyfriend at the time because I didn't want to copy her," unquote. This reminded me so much of something I heard Kate Bush say herself. And many of you know I've been on a Kate Bush journey. I have over 26 videos devoted to it, and a lot of you have been asking me when I'm going to continue. And this next Sunday, I'm going to be doing a Kate Bush live stream to discuss the future of my Kate Bush journey. I'm aiming for 4 o'clock Eastern, but if you want to check the community tab, I'll post more about it there. But I've reacted to several of Kate Bush's interviews.
When I was trying to think of possible influences on you, the name that kept coming to my mind was Joni Mitchell. I wondered if you were a fan of Joni Mitchell.
I admire her very much. I haven't, in fact, listened to her that much, and I think the main reason is I try not to listen to female artists too much, just because for me it would be too easy to relate with them. I mean, I love Joni Mitchell, and whenever I hear her, it sends shivers at me, you know, but I really try to listen to expansive music as well, just cover areas.
I actually wonder now what Kate Bush meant by expansive. Did she not find Joni Mitchell expansive?
You're just starting out, sort of, aren't you?
Actually, I've been singing professionally now for 2 years, but I consider that I've only started within the last year, because I've only felt that I've begun to have my own way to go, my own songs and my own guitar style, and I'm starting to get my own vocal styling now.
And it's interesting because early on, Kate Bush never mentions a female artist as an influence, and I wondered if she had to be careful about that early on. But in my Kate Bush in Japan video, I was surprised to find out how many Beatles covers that Kate did, which was because Kate was new at the time and people in Japan were very familiar with the Beatles, and her record company felt it would help Japan warm up to Kate Bush. Tori Amos also mentioned the Beatles as an influence, as well as Led Zeppelin. I don't know, it feels like female artists early in their career have to state male influences, but not female.
Rush and Steely Dan and like classic like guitar nerdiness. And Brian Eno too, obviously. Robert Fripp and Frippatronics and all that.
Just like I mentioned earlier, St. Vincent worked with David Byrne.
We met. Where did we meet?
Well, we're both members of a satanic cult.
And then we saw each other at the Housing Works bookstore because Bjork and the Dirty Projectors were doing a collaboration there.
Then they approached both of us, Housing Works.
Speaking of Bjork, she recently came out as a Kate Bush fan, but if you notice, this is pretty late in her career. I don't think anybody at this point is going to accuse Bjork of being a Kate Bush copycat. Bjork was accused in the beginning of her career of being the Icelandic Madonna, and no one's going to accuse her of that today either. Bjork is now a type people might be accused of copying. Which is kind of my point. No one is going to say Kate Bush is a Joni Mitchell copycat anymore. Kate has become a type. But it's taken so long. For instance, Kate Bush only being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2023, which I covered in this video back when Kate was first only nominated, and I was shocked to learn that
women make up less than 8% of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees. Wow. Only 8%? That's actually pathetic. Kate Bush is being nominated for the fourth time. Fourth time? Well, that answers my question. That was one of the things I was going to look up. How many times has she been nominated before? 4 times. Oh my God. I think it is definitely her year. But I think we better have our picket signs on the ready, just in case. I'm ready to storm the shores of Normandy.
But thankfully, we didn't have to do that because I'm not really sure where the shores of Normandy are. Hey, I'm a product of the American school system. But was Kate inducted for the right reasons? I mean, she sure as hell deserved it. But would Kate Bush even have been inducted had Running Up That Hill not been on Stranger Things? Not to mention, many people felt she wasn't rock enough, despite Eminem being nominated before her. How does that make sense? But this scrutiny is something I've noticed on my Kate Bush journey from the beginning of her career. I think this Kate Bush parody I covered in my Kate Bush parody video.
A lot of these references I'm not getting. A Bible? Oh no. She needs an intellect like a hole in the head.
Although not ill-intended, it kind of sums up the patronizing attitude that she's somehow using her sexuality too much. And it also kind of speaks to what would be the Kate Bush type. Attractive, intelligent, but also seen as trying too hard. Offbeat or woo-woo, but also especially experimental. The Dreaming, which was one of the albums St. Vincent found so inspiring, after the perceived failure of The Dreaming, she's accused of being self-indulgent, when so many male artists of the time were being just as experimental. But this was what caused Kate to kind of sort of retreat and create her own studio. And of course, some of her most influential music would emerge from that, Running Up That Hill being the first single. And this sort of retreat into solitude is something I noticed among all the artists we've covered have become everything, where they're singers, instrumentalists, writer, producer, everything. St. Vincent, Tori Amos, Bjork, Caroline Polachek, and Kate Bush herself. They've had to basically become a Prince-type artist, yet are rarely given the kind of credit for the talent that Prince has. And yet pretty much all the male influences these ladies have mentioned.
What has influenced you most musically?
I think a lot of people, probably I'd like to think my heroes have, who are basically people like Brian Ferry and David Bowie, very much so. I think he's brilliant. And people like Steely Dan
have been able to collaborate pretty consistently, and their musicianship have never been questioned. The more I thought about it, the more I was starting to have empathy for St. Vincent's Silly Little Lie. I was ready to wrap up the video that way.
She has the clout and the money. She ought to just be indie rock Beyoncé and keep her mouth shut.
But then it got so much more complicated. I came across this other Reddit thread that during the promotion for St. Vincent's Grammy Award-winning album, Daddy's Home, allegedly St. Vincent's team killed an article from a freelance writer named Emma Madden, not just from a publication, but from the internet. But like this Redditor said,
Guess Annie and her PR team never heard of the Streisand effect.
The impetus of writing it was framing it in like the fact that my dad was in prison for 10 years and he got out, you know, and that was hard. That was horrible. It was horrible. It just was. I mean, and I wrote about it in other records, but I never really, you know, talked about it head on. And then it was like, became a tabloid piece that was just like, oh God, that's not how I wouldn't have talked about it to begin with. And then it was sort of thrown out there as this like salacious, can you believe? And it's like, yeah, well, sucks.
I'm guessing this is how St. Vincent wanted Daddy's Home covered because, well, it exists. Because there's no other mention of this interview anywhere on YouTube, and that's not like YouTube. It's also not mentioned on Daddy's Home's wiki page, so is this also why the Kate Bush lie wasn't covered?
She lied about being influenced and didn't think she'd be found out. It never comes up aside from internet comments. No one ever called her out on it.
So please, before this video gets taken down, spread it. Because although I have empathy for St. Vincent, I just don't think it's right to silence your critics. Emma, at the time, was understandably upset about it, and she wrote about it.
About a fortnight ago, I was commissioned to interview St. Vincent, an artist I have been inspired by, impressed by, turned on by, compelled by, curious of, in awe of, occasionally suspicious of, for the better half of a decade. I try not to think about other journalists too much, but St. Vincent has developed a reputation for intimidating us. For her last press cycle, she made her interviewers crawl into a pink box. She would play a pre-recorded message on a tape recorder if a question bored or irked her. I found it quite funny, irresistibly imperious, but I considered it an act of degradation rather than an interesting switch of power.
That's already a little disturbing, but Emma was also nervous when the initial interview ended up taking place, but she gets a call later from St. Vincent's publicist, who's coincidentally Madonna's publicist. Interesting. She basically said that St. Vincent was uncomfortable with the interview and the interview gets killed. So Emma, understandably upset, posted the transcript of the interview.
There are some people, perhaps the more sanctimonious and morally pure, who might not be interested in an artist's reflection on their father's white-collar crimes. Do you have much sympathy for those kinds of people?
I mean, I think I can get sympathy for all people. If that is the reason why they decide not to spend 46 minutes with my work, then I'm sure there's plenty of other work out there for them that they can enjoy that is morally pure. They should find pure work from pure people and enjoy it.
And for the most part was getting a lot of empathy.
During the time you were making this record, which is partially about your father's time in prison, how did that square with your thoughts on prison and the US carceral system?
Well, I have plenty of thoughts on it. I'm not totally sure how it's relevant to this.
But it's alleged that she received legal threats and took it down and shut down her Twitter and went private for a while. I'm not going to read the whole article, otherwise this video is going to be a million years long, but I'll leave it linked in the description. Reading it is just obvious to me that St. Vincent is painfully wary of how she's coming across.
Yeah, the reason I brought up prison abolition earlier is because that might be how some people contextualize this album.
I would say that that's one lens. That to me would not be the main lens. I'm told to wrap it up.
And it just must be exhausting. And this Redditor has an interesting point.
I think the album is much more about herself as Daddy with Daddy's Home being a tongue-in-cheek joke, rather than it being literally about her dad. She's probably only realizing now that she doesn't feel comfortable addressing topics like prison abolition or her father's white-collar crimes. In that case, she probably shouldn't have highlighted her dad's story in the first place to sell albums if she wasn't willing to talk about it.
But it even more emphasized how I feel how female artists are ultra-scrutinized, even by other women. Some of the questions do seem like she's going for a gotcha moment. And this Redditor has an interesting point.
People don't typically call for prison abolition or police reform because of their feeling on white-collar crime. You know, it seemed like the interviewer trying ham-fistedly to shoehorn in some contemporary politics that didn't necessarily relate.
I'm not saying that this never happens to male artists. I mean, really, that's the plot of Almost Famous. But there's such a toxic history for experimental female artists.
This sub really turns on any artist who gets more notoriety. Look at any Phoebe Bridgers thread from 2019 and compare them to recent ones.
Kate Bush, who's basically an angel descended to Earth, and it still even happened to her. And I wonder how Kate Bush would be covered if she was just coming on the scene today. But then I remembered researching another video where I needed to find footage of Kate's 2014 residency. 22 performances, her first in a decade. The video had the most repellent comments about her weight. I couldn't even find the video, but then I found all these articles that had commented on it at the time, like this writer who said,
hadn't skimped on the pasties during her 35-year absence from the stage.
A so-called apology entitled,
It shouldn't be a crime to ask who ate all the pasties.
I know Kate does things in her own time, but it made me wonder, is this why there has not been a public performance since 2014? Or an interview? Or why she wasn't at her own induction? It honestly was anticlimactic without her. Not that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is so great anyway. It was just so nice that Kate Bush was finally getting her flowers. And there are legions of fans who are excited for those 2014 performances. But then comments like this from a supposed fan of 36 years, not even gonna read it, you can pause it if you want, but male legends are just allowed much more grace as they age.
And now come to think of it, most of the other pop stars caught in a lie, they were almost all female artists. And also the other lies were things that could be considered maybe because of like the sexism in the music industry. For instance, there are quite a few like age lies, female artists who've lied about their age. You know, lip syncing was another big one. And that was something I noticed on YouTube. And they're mostly female artists that get accused of not being able to sing very well live versus the record.
So yeah, if you're looking this up, live versus the record or artists without auto-tune, as you can see, most of these videos are about female artists. Caroline Polachek has had to defend herself against auto-tune rumors because of the unique way she's able to use her voice.
Haters will say it's auto-tune.
She's gonna handle the high notes, boys.
Ah, he sounds good here.
He does.
I actually heard people say that they don't think that Lizzo is a very good singer. I don't.
I'm still flirty. That chick o'clock, yeah, it's thick 30. I've been through a lot, but I'm still flirty.
It's like fine. I don't know.
If you compare to poop.
Kim Petras, who was pretty recently had to field auto-tune accusations because of her unique, quick vibrato.
What I do for you, you don't know me all too well. I'm not one to be afraid, not one to go and give it up for you, put it down. You should put me out close, you should put me out close.
And she also did a cover of Running Up That Hill. So that brings this all full circle. The scrutiny is so great. You need to be so extra extraordinary in order to get even a quarter of the respect. There's so many more forums today in which to say hateful things. Remember, I wondered how they would cover Kate Bush today? Of course, they wouldn't have said what they said about her weight when she was 19. But Kate is just as complicated as an artist like St. Vincent. Would there have been something else to be faux outraged about? This video has doubled in size in the last 2 days because of information I found. including this article about St. Vincent's new video. You know, that one we started with for Broken Man? A new controversy. People found it very insensitive after what happened with U.S. Airman Aaron Bushnell, when videos of his self, well, you know, just tragic. I hadn't even thought of that, and I felt terrible because I even joked about St. Vincent's video. A silly little joke, but it's not funny, and I'm sure St. Vincent didn't intend that either. And I was just gonna remove it, but then I realized that perfectly illustrates how easy it is to make a mistake like that.
In the spectrum of problematic celebrities, I've never seen any do anything harmful to anyone, other than maybe annoy a few journalists, so I find this baffling and kind of a bummer. I know standards are different for women, and men can get away with much worse behavior without getting the same kind of hate, but I wondered if there was more to it.
Well, is there? She has a point. But what about these other celebrities? The comments mentioned Lana Del Rey, Grimes, but what about Lizzo or Imogen Heap? Oh, you're wondering, what did Imogen Heap do? Nothing. We also rarely hear about her anymore, and initially was going to make a series about rock stars caught in a lie, but I just as easily could have made one on female artists. I have questions whether they've gotten a raw deal or not. We already discussed how many promising indie artists have disappeared. Music is so much more disposable. Would we even have the legacy of Kate Bush if she arrived the same time as St. Vincent?
So I don't know. Like I said, I am so curious out of every video I've ever made what your opinion is. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this. And also let me know if you'd like to see more of these. I'm interested in human behavior and I'm interested in music, so this is so up my alley. But if you'd like to see another video, there'll be one right here. Or you can check out my Kate Bush playlist down here. Or you can subscribe to me right here if you feel so inclined. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope I get to see you next time. Popcorn Philosopher over and out.